6 in the morning, after 12 long hours of traveling by bus, Tashi Dorji and his wife, Youngzen, finally arrive in Delhi from Dharamsala. They do not have a moment to rest. In the next 12 hours, they will be busy picking out goods, packing and transporting them. At 6 p.m., they will drive overnight back to Dharamsala. Karl Bagh is a commercial block in central Delhi, India. The shopping streets here are known for its cheap clothing, shoes, and more. It's a paradise for vendors, tourists, and pickpockets. Tashi Dorji and Youngzen move quickly amongst the shops to purchase goods. Delhi has a great variety of goods and prices are relatively cheap. Tashi Dorji has lived in India for nearly 40 years and can converse fluently in Hindi with local store owners.
किस तरह से रोटी खिला रहे हैं मेहनत कैसे कमा रहे हैं हाँ यही है बाकी कुछ नहीं है अब ये मुझे यहाँ से 추우셔는 자가이나 버저 사사로 남기 욕부터라 그 드림 지달래도 어디 정말 욕부
After selecting the goods, Tashi Dorji and Youngzen began to pack. In order to avoid taxes and inspections, they divide the goods into small packages and hire tricycles to transport them back to the hotel and bus station bit by bit.
삼삼 주래 주사나 사래 아니 잘라 녀겨도 배자 단단 떼어 아디 남도 욕만 욕래 근데 가장 아주 퇴되고 말아 퇴만된 퇴되나 접상고 여고 군서 기루라 아니 잘라 버침부 말아 잘라 융융이 있던 거라 아디 되는데 뭐다 삼삼 주래 삼삼 다들 남도 개마게래 삼삼 주래 주는 배냥게래 오랑아 두 기루 전 삼삼은 주고 말해 근데 다 신앙 사셔들래 아니 강에도 빼요래 답변이 들리는 키용도 몰람 재미 좀 내야래
The sun is setting. Looking at his cart full of goods, Tashi Dorji starts to hum a little tune. But his wife, Youngzen, instinctively begins to worry about their 4 children at home.
아니 양한테 나한테 총기도 양 총대 양 술을 잡아다오 게미요 미도 구마 게미요 근데 심심데 망보요
아니 양 아주 드링데 드링나 로마도나 양 룸다도 공책부치도 니로란 잡고요 가도이나 아니 양데 데너롱 공책부치 아니 양도 샤제샤제 로도는 프부다니요 마라 샤제샤제 로도 드링나 드리 쇼글레 마 드링나 공다 로도에 생 쇼게 추즈 두 책을 보도 못 통그래요 야 Sama dikit kan?
From Delhi all the way north, through the vast northern Indian plains, Tashi Dorji and his wife Youngzen arrive at Himachal Pradesh, in the southern foothills of the Himalayas. Along the mountain roads, they continue to travel through the villages and towns in their sleep. After another arduous 12 hours and 500 kilometers later, they return to Dharamsala where they live. As night turns into day, Tashi Dorji takes out his prayer beads and begins to chant. Dharamsala is a famous tourist attraction in India. Because of its cool summer climate and beautiful scenery, it was once the summer capital of British India. In 1905, a major earthquake destroyed Dharamsala. It was not until the 1960s, when tens of thousands of Tibetans in exile were placed here, that it started to regain its glory. Dharamsala is divided into two areas, upper and lower. The population of lower Dharamsala is 10,000, mainly Indian natives. Upper Dharamsala, also known as MacLeod Ganj, is where the Dalai Lama resides and home to CTA, the Central Tibet Administration. It is known as Little Lhasa and has a population of about 23,000. It is mainly Tibetans. Its pillar industry is the sale of small commodities by people like Tashi Dorji and Youngzen. When Tashi Dorji and Youngzen returned to Dharamsala, most of the residents in the city were still asleep. 8 o'clock in the morning is when Dharamsala is the cleanest. People clean up the trash from the day before to welcome a new day of business. But 10 years ago, the situation here was completely different.
I said small and dirty, right, Dharamsala, with no concept of a sidewalk where people, drive. That's a sidewalk. And garbage, trash everywhere. They basically throw anything on the street.
I was told by one of the officers of CTA that one of the Chinese media published an article about how dirty Dharamsala was. They were very angry, and at the same time they were very embarrassed. They started this project called the Clean Upper Dharamsala Project. And that started from 2011, and ever since 2011, compared to the other cities in India, it's a very clean city. I must say, honestly, it doesn't reach the standards of Japan.
Tashi Dorji and Youngzen place the goods they purchased in Delhi in the small warehouse they rented and hastily start preparing for their stalls. The couple each has a stall in the main street of Dharamsala. The main customers are tourists. The whole street is filled with stalls that sell traditional Tibetan handicrafts, Tibetan medicine, and Buddhist instruments. Sales of such goods are the main source of income for the Tibetan community. During the tourist high season from March to August is what the livelihood of the entire Tibetan community in exile depends on.
lakwe sege chala yakse mangshe khari timidu
lakwa sike langshe nganzo di dur pu su che ani pu shamu ani ngando sotal le yora sotal ni sotal pe yak dur ani tan su le kya da chi re mishin le kya nganzo gawo chi mar yaksha pu shamu tang
야가지도 여도 몰라 이제 지기도 와 가지게 미친 게나 키용 주만이 랍데 거라 야가 코나스 나마 망보여라 맞아 그때 오늘 코나 레가 통거라 코나스 오토 티 거라 드링 사기 메나 상이 티 거라 코나 뭐여 레나 코나스 드링 고고 메나 상이 양테 쳐라 드르피스 가질 비숨 시고라 냐나 맞아 제메게 레고래 제가 맞아 데가 레 오늘 뭐여 거라 코나스 테네 땅 라벨레 교데 입제당 법벨레니 여 가서 갈려 레게 간 망세기 레라 소소 나랑레 치러라 홀셀 티기래 kalli chembure pe mazi kalli chembure te ngone kalli pe na gunjong de so te yayu kalli chembure jaga jayu na papa kanga ke ede kalli janye yore papa senyi de godi ke
Dharamsala has all the conditions for a tourist destination. Beautiful scenery, rich Tibetan culture, religion, bed and breakfasts, and meditation retreats that have been popular in recent years. The endless stream of tourists have made Dharamsala a display window for exiled Tibetans to the world and a public opinion battlefield for international support and sympathy.
Any English-speaking person can go to Dharamsala and understand thoroughly. Every people that you meet there speaks English, and all the signs, they're all written in English. Government facilities especially, all the signs are written in English, more than the Tibetan language. And it's important for the Western people to recognize more than their own people.
Dilek Hospital is the best Western hospital for Tibetan exiles in India. It is also the largest public hospital for Tibetans in India. It has a good reputation and high ratings on many travel websites in the West.
All your 3 films are inside this.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome. Okay.
Good evening.
Right.
Ali kondo sangi de
All of the Dilek Hospital's operating costs are funded by donations. Seeing a doctor here, regardless of nationality or ethnicity, only cost 40 rupees, or US 50 cents.
pesha yogo chigere yogo tourist da pesha yogo jora denzola kong challenge pesha manga lens khonzola keguchi mare kya manga len wores khaisna mengangi ke mission statement na ya mi samolo chigwa chego yus chesan chigwa imbo so nge ngene pesha yola pesha manga len da nyuala mewa so de ke meje kyo pesha dula ni manga ko ya da kyo chigene yogo le manga ko ya da de ga so kyunira shishen yo mares.
Although Dilek Hospital is the best Western hospital for Tibetan exiles in India, it is not even in the top 200 hospitals in India. In the summer of 2017, there were 45 beds and almost 50 staff members, including 7 Tibetan doctors and 16 Tibetan nurses.
It's more like a clinic or like a community hospital. They have a very well-trained doctors and nurses, but must say the medical instruments, the equipment that they use is still, I must say, it's a very old model.
Japanese director Tamio Ota was rushed to Dilek Hospital during filming in Dharamsala. He was diagnosed as having a heart attack by the hospital due to his rapid heartbeat and a sharp rise in blood pressure.
I returned to Japan and was finally diagnosed as Meniere's disease, which comes from the ears. My symptoms were more like having a heart attack. The doctor told me, where do you feel pain the most? And I said, here. I said, not here, here. So the doctors assumed that it was your heart. Dilek Hospital didn't have MRIs. I didn't see any CT. In the echoes, it didn't show anything wrong with my heart. And then they had no way of checking my brain. It's very difficult for what they have. And if I don't feel comfortable, they did recommend me to go to the general hospital in Delhi. Delhi Hospital is more like the first stop for emergencies.
Okay.
Norbu House in the small alley may not look like much, but it is a big deal. From the hotel's balcony, you can see the Dalai Lama's residence. It has hosted many foreign delegations and celebrities and is one of the best hotels in Dharamsala. The owner of the hotel, Wangdu Saling, is a second-generation Tibetan born in India. He is known to be generous and very well respected in the community.
나의 호텔 침바 망불라 대가 두어래 아니 호텔 미지기 장막 룸 가져 쓰고면 장막 예하고 배나 차샤나 다 나주 정간텔라 강바 숨주 속섬 열해 아니 텔라 강미 장막 중에 보무 쪽섬 열 자베 정가 야가 둔줄나라 미지기 강바 주 용쇠를 정아 접게 니슈딘의 장막 쓰고도 와라 디시조 지난 예텔라 보무 실을 하고 왜 요말 이내 얘들 부모 쪽섬 요래 가있으나 다 직내당 얘기 다직 유미 부모들도 냠다 제 dinjole 내가 직 팬도나산에 앵에 유미 튠데레 가리는데 자가 동세 다직 교부 품 김에든죠 망고질 당고 숨쉬시요 마시요 말에 니네 지기티요 야구도 양 따데 내가 지게 정말 낭민나시 좋아지니 내가 지게 장장이 아니 디 품에 망고질라 내가 때도와디 아니 가서도 아니 디가라 아니.
That is how the 27-year-old Pempa Tashi came to work at Norbu House.
My artist.
When Pempa Tashi was 7 years old, he followed a group of adults over the Himalayas to India. He had studied painting in the temple for a few years, so now he is a painter at Norbu House.
수술 모랑게 라인 나도나 수술직 새로운 망슈 등에 단다 직 되게 윤종도 상황이 들고 가슈 들리지 지게가 또 속에 보달라다 양주 고발다
보달라 무대보다 도움이 있다.
티티리 단단한 것들아 직 라자도 야기 동행 휴스도 이렇게 단단한 것들아 맹도 소드나 아니 중앙하게 이 참에서 하마라 말하기 제시도 된도지 두나 상무직 그베기 윤종장장 다 아니 라마이 부바다 들리샤 양지 제남다 이런 Dharamsala mo kelele art kelele thanga tongsa changma yobora dengdur mo ke pudi yong da energy chimda this Dharamsala
I was very surprised when Pempa sent me a message asking for a donation. He was invited to this art festival, which is going to be held in Spain. I'm sure he's sent to many other people. It was very brief, very short. Japanese are very shy people. We cannot ask anybody who we know for 7 days for money. Maybe for him it was a very normal thing. I've seen as the CTA is heavily sponsored. Almost all of the people in the exile community have either something to do with the donations or is involved or have some part of it. I'll say, I'll try, I'll look into it, but he didn't go to Spain as far as I know.
ini cik jende da ini songang da sama nyambo es jende cik dengan mite tharang cik na tadi tugu yame te aku marah na remuti ta mi ola te na yunga marah ngara ta lokasi silaji ting ti srawe na remuki cik anju pyoge cik
Descending from Upper Dharamsala, where the exiled Tibetans live, and through local Indian residents in Lower Dharamsala, we arrive at the outskirts of Dharamsala and see a group of buildings amongst the mountains. This is the only building seen in Dharamsala where Tibetan language is used on signs. This is the reception center for exiled Tibetans. Tibetans who have just fled to India will be sent here for review and documentation. Here is the starting point for their new life in India.
알레 타 당보 브라운조 페니 타 출레고라 직스니스 고르규스 파윌라라 아니 디니 아니 델리닐레 칸니 균 안데 담슬라닐레 칸레고레 안 델랑안조기 크라운조 갸갈라 데초에기
After relocation and an expansion, the current reception center is said to be able to accommodate 160 families at one time. However, in the summer of 2017, it is empty.
다 내가 브링갈 탄다 미시레 아니라 집체 아니 낭미 아마 암라 팔란 모지 크로스 난데 멘주 체체 슈레 아니라 디 탄다 이차 디스트릭에 마라 RCB 그 프로세스 되듯 아니 디스웰라 타와 직스니스 고르고 있어 보이라라.
The Alien Registration Certificate is the most important document for exiled Tibetans in India and is also known as an RC. After getting their RC, Tibetans can enjoy almost the same rights as Indian citizens, except they cannot own land, become government civil servants, or have regular Indian passports.
kuma shona tangjo kuma de kyo kuma ko jan ti ma de tangbo arsi ko yele ge ja ge tagara re tangjo ko de ba arasi rasi de ba lamga ni de na mi ji no de ma de ju mara ko zama zama ke guj me na ko la zi yo me kara ko ja ge shio de na de ba de ara de tung de rasi de na iska arsi ga arsi check chi tangbo.
A lot of people call that a refugee certificate, which is wrong. The official name for RC is a registration certificate, and it applies to all foreigners living in India. India is not a ratified state country for the Refugee Convention of the United Nations because they had a lot of problems with the Bangladeshis in the 1950s. The word refugee doesn't apply in India.
On the wall of the reception center hangs many photographs. The photographs document scenes of the exiled Tibetans trekking over the Himalayas to arrive in India. Many people suffered severe frostbite, resulting in lifelong disabilities. There are stories that are even more tragic that are not documented by the camera.
Ngi aja gembe mingla sijure. Lamga ne phön yung du ne lamga la lana la se de ne thongre.
Ta mi mang bu nyam bo ji pinje ni sa ro. Ji yong ni gang la ji ma ge la gang nang la sa song la song. Gang nang la sa ni gang la ta thakpa ji tang thakpa di ge lama ki thakpa zo ta gi yo ma lama ke ji ni gang nang la pe ta sa cha. Sa cha ni gang la ni mi mang ge ya the ni gang la lama ki chu zo nga ig ma jo ta nga ma ig la kun so gong da na khong cha ni ji. Ani gang la po mo ji pinje ni yor ta. Morang aja dos ji ni gang ni sha song ji ta dong ti she ko re. 띵이 통요 말다 니 샤컴보니 사라 렙니 카트라 가야 먹게 싹다요 통송아 나저 땅보갑라.
Tsering Yangzan has been in India for nearly 20 years. Her mother died when she was young and her father left home. In order to escape abuse from her aunt, Tsering Yangzan left Tibet for India at the age of 9 and encountered the most horrible incident of her childhood.
Na undi na mangche mi gemba che kusho che and gonda jula jortu nga nepali pu ni yora chini khunjuni nga mi chik za chesra mi chik za le cheso ani khangba den ro tu thushi ro jing na le ches an min khangba den ni tin ni dura gonda nga ni kuto nga ma ni do chin de da an de mi de la ni tin ni dura an ni tin ni da nguni jin de su nyera mi te nga yem de nyera li de an nga shesra nga ngui ba chen nga nga ni me chen nga go de and ro get ro jik du de gon che mi dura an de dam la chen nga go la tham ching ngui de ba.
The building next to the reception center is the Tibetan Transit School. The school was opened in the 1970s, and its mission is to provide vocational training for young Tibetans that are new here.
Dela loma legun da lo chidangi loze chani lo chopki ni sumju bache tukyo dünge gege mangshu gege dende le thuzu ji do yina ta thandi chala nganzu lobda dina loma gubju goni ye gubju goni ne phutu ju re tuk che ani pomo ni shu tse tuk ro changa pomo ni tse tuk ye kadu yina ya loma na pomo nyonga yure ni don digngwe do yina pugu yo lo re le yongge mangbu shu ji resha ni don chungi nang la pugu gya zas le so dene choksom lagi ta gya zas ro jre te dine ma pu ngam chu nge ta che ni don chu la pugu di ni don chu ina yan tis pugu ship chu zas le so ni don chunga de pugu chubge ma shi me loji la yongge ni don chunga la pugu nyonyo shu chi le se ta peje naning di tungo anje gi dende ji gyu ni pas ra gyo mangbu che ni don chunga da jina tanda pugu lo chu yongge ko ra pugu chubge ma shi me wa dine ni don chu nang lo la pugu ship chu sherang su le bi chu yongge pugu ship chu sherang su chung su.
The Tibetan Transit School provides training in language, computer, cooking, sewing, and more. Students stay from 3 to 8 years. After graduation, students join the service industries as chefs, tailors, beauticians, hairdressers, and painters. Damchoy Thinlay is 25 years old and has been studying in the Tibetan Transit School for 11 years.
Tatangan ina ta lo thamad chawe kaudandi lo thamad lo chi majil hame ngata tan zida juni no yo ani nga chogi lajum shaya ta poil ti zja an te da nyam bo yinji ti zja ina ta maung ba ngarong gi phuson je ra ate da nyam bo cha nyam bo yo za ani ta ngarong chutom poil ta ngarong poba gi ke tambo de indi chamba ani ma chane su poke she ani poil ti zja de te indu shida shujago mepe zon da jidu antaina injiteta ngarons kichashia ina ta ke ni ba chaora o tombo le de te zon la kangen du da ina ya shuja ni jon du tsamba shia dus ana tendi chi de tsamba ga inji jon ta shi shi is ta inji jon yo jon sa ji gora atendi indu tsamba ta nga di habdan dinun zune ana tata inji jom tendichen dewas anita good morning.
Good morning. Sit down. Okay. All of you are present. Tamje?
Yes.
Can you just ring? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Now take out your textbooks.
My dream is simple, is just to move to USA. The first thing is I don't have any relatives here, include my parents. And the second thing is I don't speak Hindi. And third thing is here, if you want to live, it's very difficult. There is less job opportunities and there is
I also don't have that much connection with different people. Unlike the journey from Tibet to India, we can, just cross the mountains and the rivers. It's not like this. We need the documents, the good documents, and for that good documents, it takes time. Gashute basketballing ball around. The Shitong Atsundine Simun Mambutse charging the Yomare. And the Ina Bolotse charging the Yoratangazundine. She needed some non sukutim in the US, bullets sukutim in the US. And then a logi bullets in the sukutim in the bullets is. Tanga Gashute, Simon on Gashute, basketballing, and non judo chiton bologi. La tono te de MBA yarata tendrila tono pe MBA kita polutsen tendrila pe gauyas and tendrila tono pe chembuyas.
Damchoi Thinlay is the youngest in the family. He was only 14 when he left home. He still doesn't quite understand why his parents sent him to India alone.
다 동부 레드 나 춘춘라 오늘 동부 레드 sembacho do susu 니에노 요지기 샤운충 다 care the love yara te kanga la ro ra ke ma chi shutsu sabare chwa sabare ndi no kong de kong khala ka go de lo 춘춘이 de ti de do sus ta ina yo ma 좀 파마도 냠 보차긴 돼요 여드 좀바 bet ko chi kalo ka de milon ton do ta ani Sans Kishidu Kozu Tipe Sedua Kitchen at the Share and because Michishat and Ripendus.
Family is not always what triggers the sadness and tears. Sometimes it's the discrimination one suffers from their own kind to being an outsider.
Loptola Druchashananda, the Dudu was the Punlig Mamboera. Don't what pay more causing answer to Pearl Dudu Ku Namshi Tamuchen. Hala saya dundu thangma pe shukchim boyara sham to rangshi mau chai ta chiyora chi semba na le phoktu to le ta semba ro kyo ta dinde yunguda.
Whether it is a new Tibetan exile or an exile who has settled in India for some time, they must all bear the insults and resentment of being in a country that is not their own.
I got, often abused verbally in Dharamsala, either in restaurant or in a bus or basically anywhere. 1997, somewhere in June, in a bus near Meglodganj, there was this little Tibetan boy with his mother, and this Indian man, probably Gadi man, probably about 40 years or so, he basically, tried to yank that boy out of the chair so he could sit. So he abused him verbally. He threatened him, and he slapped him, left and right. That's when I said, enough is enough. And then we had a fight. Again, they all, ganged up upon me, and I got beaten into unconsciousness. I still remember they would scream, Maro. Maro is like beat, free for all now. Here's a Tibetan, Tibetan motherfucker, beat him. And this I never forget.
A report published in 2016 by the US-based Tibet Justice Center shows that since the 1980s, the relationship between Tibetans in exile and Indians has become increasingly tense and violent, and hostility erupted occasionally. In recent years, the anti-Tibetan sentiment has appeared as part of a general animus towards immigrant groups. 1994, April, in Dharamsala. The violence erupted after a Tibetan youth stabbed an Indian taxi driver to death during a dispute. Indian mob looted Tibetan-owned stores and burned Tibetan government offices. The Indian government even temporarily closed the reception center in Dharamsala. In November 1999, the Dalai Lama considered relocating some of the CTA's offices and his private residence out of Dharamsala, as the growing tension between the locals and the Tibetans were becoming a cause of worry. However, ultimately the plan was put on hold. In 2008, the tensions between Indians and Tibetans escalated again. After frequent violent clashes, Tibetans launched an action to boycott Indian taxis. In Manali in the north, Bundila in the northeast, and Mysore in the south, a large number of Tibetan shops were burned or looted.
When we had a situation like this in 1994, Tibetan government was completely unprepared. Any time when the Tibetan Welfare Office shows up at the scene, the damage is already done. They hide it, they don't talk about it, because they're afraid of offending the host. And I don't agree with that. Thank you, host, for letting us stay in. But if you rape us, we got to speak up.
In 2015 October, another Tibetan young man was killed in Dharamsala.
The three boys were drunk and followed the two Tibetans while passing comments on them.
A Tibetan couple were stopped and harassed by 3 Indian natives when they returned home one night. The 29-year-old Tibetan male was stabbed to death on the spot. The 3 Indians were sentenced to life imprisonment 2 years later.
It was more or less a kind of a blind murder case, and on the basis of clues provided by a witness, we identified 3 possible accused persons.
So there's a sense of hatred and a sense of anti-Tibetans, and also I guess it's all because of drugs or because of the alcohol and all that makes that happen.
I found it very odd because we hired a fixer, and he was Indian. We were trying to get the information about the murder case. Every time this happened, we were stopped by the fixer. And then he said, everything's all settled. They don't want the foreigners to hear about this. Tibetans, basically, they keep their mouths shut. They're very smart, they're very wise, They try not to make that as a big issue. Now, they're living under the Indian land.
I hated that. That sense of homelessness, that sense of statelessness.
지나게 가서 수수 나는 요 말에 군대면은 가서 대고 매 강가 대디고라 되게 요 말 칼 사다기를 좀 되니라 가도 패는 죽라는 로셔저래.
Entering Dharamsala, we peel away the layers shrouding this mysterious little town in the Far East. What other stories about the 60 years of exile are waiting to be revealed?